everyone, it's Jim and Amadeus. We're with you today. It's a Thursday, and Amadeus, last night we had a full slate of MLS games and some pretty wild ones. Anything piqued your fancy on games last night?
Yeah, it was definitely an exciting card. We had some crazy comebacks. I know Real Salt Lake came back down 2-0 in that one. We had I think
that was a great game.
Yeah, I think the Red Bulls too. They were up 1-0 and 2-1, and then they ended up tying. Or no, Cincinnati ended up beating. They were up 1-0, and Cincinnati came back. You know, I'll never understand that. So Cincinnati's the best team in the MLS this season, and you know, the last 3 road games they've been plus 250 or more on the road, and it makes zero sense to me because you would never see Manchester City plus 250 on the road against, you know, even a team like Arsenal in the Premier League. So it's an absolute joke to me. I don't know why these teams just don't bring anybody on the road. But yeah, I find it interesting how, you know, every time the Cincinnati team, they've got 2 losses all season, and, you know, you're getting plus 250s on the road with them.
That's pretty heavy juice on that kind of stuff. I mean, it's interesting. I do agree with you though on the Real Salt Lake game. That was something special last night. That was pretty amazing.
And we've talked about them before.
And they had chances all night long. I mean, both of them, Kansas City and Salt Lake. And I mean, they were banging it all over the place.
Yeah, that was one of those teams I mentioned how, you know, they can't seem to play at home in their own altitude, but then they go on the road and they're one of the best road teams in the MLS. Right. Even down 2-0, they come away with a point.
Right.
So.
What are you going to do? Let me run through the scoreboard real quick. New England beat Atlanta 2-1. It was Cincinnati, as you just said, Cincinnati got a result 2-1 over Red Bulls. The United States and Panama drew last night.
Yes, and Panama won in penalties.
Right. Which
so now you're getting a Panama-Mexico final, which
yep. Not exactly what the old USA thought, but you know what? You got to play the game.
Well, you know, we talked about it, how it wasn't the strong USA team that was in the tournament. This was like a B team for USA. Well, all those like Nations League winners withdrew. Yeah. So they skirted by Canada, but couldn't get by Panama. And Mexico absolutely destroyed Jamaica. I was on Jamaica +1. So much for them winning the tournament. But it looks like Mexico will probably take the Gold Cup.
Well, Mexico beat Jamaica 3-0 last night. Minnesota 3-0 over Houston. The game that we were talking about being so good, Kansas City and Real Salt Lake, 2-2 draw. You had Philadelphia taking Nashville 2-0.
Surprisingly,
yeah,
without their starting goalie, who was in that Jamaica game.
Amazing. Colorado and Portland played to a draw, nothing last night. Chicago shut out Montreal 3-0. We already mentioned that Mexico had kind of win last night over Jamaica. LAFC shut out St. Louis 3-0. It was San Jose 2-0 over Seattle. It was Vancouver 2-1 over Austin. And then all the games that will be coming up, that's going to be on Saturday. So that was your card from last night. Some fun games, some interesting games. Speaking of which, starting next week, we will be in the Women's World Cup. And so our friends at Eurosport have put together a video for us, and we're going to take a look at it. Then we're going to comment on it on the other side. They're previewing the Women's World Cup. Here's who they think are some of the teams to look out for. And then what will happen is, Amadeus and I will comment on it after we watch it with you. Ready? Here we go, folks.
2022 finished in style as a special World Cup came to a close in Qatar. This summer, it's the turn of Australia and New Zealand to host the tournament as the best women's players in the game make their way down under. So can the US make it 3 in a row, or could we see an upset? Hello there and welcome to Football Now from Doha. Just 1 month to go until one of the sport's biggest competitions kicks off. The FIFA Women's World Cup takes place in both Australia and New Zealand for the first time. You can look back on our Football Now episode from March to see a rundown of the stadiums that are hosting matches. But this week, we're taking a look at some of the favourites to win the competition. So let's start with the reigning champions then, the USA, who have won the competition a record 4 times. So will 2023 be the year that they hit that magic number 5.
Well, I think they're in pretty good shape right now, and they showed it during the recent She Believes Cup sort of mini tournament that was played at the same time as the Arnold Clark Cup and some of the other tournaments around the world. The mental piece of it is undoubtedly a big deal. And it's actually an interesting storyline with this U.S. squad because they will go into the World Cup with a significant number of players who have not played in a major tournament before. And even a player like Kristie Mewis, who debuted at the Olympics, well, there were no fans in the stands, so it was a different kind of dynamic. I think that's a big piece of why Megan Rapinoe is with this team now, even though she's not a starter, even though she's not a guaranteed player, frankly, at all. I don't know if there is one absolute slam dunk favorite in this World Cup, but I think the U.S. is certainly going to be on the list of the many favorites that there are.
So the USA knows what it's like to win trophies, but so do strong contenders England, who picked up the European Championships trophy last summer when beating Germany at Wembley in the final. They will, though, be without some of their key players this summer due to injury, so can they go one step further and win the big one?
I think the Women's World Cup this summer could be a struggle for England, although, as you say, they're favourites. They're missing their best players. I mean, firstly, you've got Leah Williamson. She's a captain, she's a leader. She was incredible during the Euros, and she's been incredible for Arsenal as well this season as well. She also scored in that final in the Euros as well. But, you know, you've also got the others, Beth Mead, who's been incredible as well. And then there's also Fran Kirby as well, who's had her struggles with injuries over the years, but she's been incredible for England as well. And I know that she will be gutted to miss out on this World Cup.
Now, Germany have won the Women's World Cup twice, last lifting the trophy in 2007. But that loss to England in the Euros final could mean that they have something to prove this summer. The national elf has both youth and experience on their side. The big question is, can they make it count?
Something that Germany have done really well over the past couple of years is give young players a chance really early on. So we saw a lot of young players at the 2019 World Cup for Germany get a good load of minutes. So there are players who are still in their early 20s who are going to their second World Cup. I think it's that blend of youth and experience which makes Germany really dangerous, but Germany have the players to win this World Cup 100%.
Now, Sweden are renowned as a dominant force in women's international football and consistently display impressive performances in major competitions. Whether it's the World Cup, the Euros or the Olympics, they regularly find themselves at the latter stages of tournaments. The problem is they haven't won anything since 1984. So can they turn fine attempts into a winning mentality?
Yeah, Sweden feel like the perennial bridesmaids of women's football, to be honest. They regularly go really deep in tournaments, but it just feels like they've never got that final moment to get them over the line. And I think the Euros was an especially tough one for them because they obviously reached the semi-finals only to be totally humbled by England losing 4-0, obviously. They've still got, a host of really exciting, really talented players. Fridolina Rolfo, who scored the winning goal in the Champions League final, she's probably the standout one for them. But I think Sweden's problem a lot of the time is they've got very talented players, but they're not always the most consistent. I think they've got an issue whereby lots of the players in the squad who you'd want to really be standout players also haven't had loads of minutes at their club. But listen, they're still a team who know what it is to get to the latter stages of competitions. But I think in terms of the organisation of the team, they feel quite chaotic. They haven't really had those kind of confidence-boosting wins, which you feel like they would have needed in between that sort of embarrassing Euros exit and the World Cup to really be seen as a threat.
What about some of the other contenders then? Well, the hosts have injuries to contend with, but in Sam Kerr and Ellie Carpenter, they've got two players capable of taking them to glory, not to mention home advantage. France have a new manager at the helm. Hervé Renard is highly regarded, particularly after his impressive performance as Saudi Arabia coach at the men's tournament last summer. Could 2023 be the year that Les Bleus win their first Women's World Cup? Spain have some of the best players in the world, including Aitana Bonmati, Sandra Panos and Ballon d'Or winner Alexia Putellas. But after a falling out with their manager Jorge Vilda, 15 of their key players have currently made themselves unavailable for selection. So will this tournament come too soon for Las Soñadoras? Incredibly, this could be Marta's 6th World Cup. Brazil are by no means the favourites, but they've been in every tournament since the first in 1991, and having reached the final in 2007, they've got pedigree. Keep an eye out for the 2021 Olympics gold winners medalists Canada and 2019 World Cup runners-up the Netherlands too.
Yeah, it's fair to say that this is going to be one of the most open Women's World Cups we've seen for quite some time. That brings us to the end of this week's show. Do let us know your thoughts at home using the hashtag #FootballNow Women's World Cup, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
It's the Euro news there. Pretty much what you thought, right? We talked a little bit about it yesterday, but it's pretty much the basic usual suspects, you think?
Yeah, I didn't like how they threw Spain in at the end there. I get they have a lot of unavailable players, but still, Spain. You know, when you look at this Spain team, their entire makeup is almost the Barcelona women's club, and those are the Champions League. They are the Champions League winners back in June. So I still think Spain is kind of a dark horse in this World Cup, but it's interesting. I think they gave too much credit to England. They had obviously England, according to the books as well, England is the second favorite to win the tournament, but I think England's very overrated coming into the tournament. As they touched on in the video, they did win the Euro Cup last year, but if you actually look at their matches, they struggled heavily in that Euro Cup. They had to go to extra time to beat Germany. They needed extra time to beat Spain. Pretty much every single game they played needed, once they got into the knockout stages of the tournament, needed extra time or penalties. And even when they played Brazil just a few months ago, I think back in February, in the CONMEBOL UEFA Cup of Champions, so where the Copa America champions Brazil played the Euro Cup champions England. Again, England won that Cup of Champions after a 1-1 draw. They won in penalties.
Hey, we got our buddy Rye out there. Hey, Rye, how you doing? Soccer kicked your butt yesterday. If you want to, you can join us. I'll give you a quick invitation. You can just pop on and say hi. Last week we were wondering where you were because we were talking a little bit of NASCAR and wanted to get your thoughts on that. But soccer gave you a hard time yesterday. Sorry about that, buddy. But you'll make it back in NASCAR, right?
Oh yeah! Shout out to Rye Cape, the NASCAR expert.
Right, the NASCAR expert. I think the thought around circles here in the U.S. is that the U.S. team is young but talented enough to win. But then again, there's always that situation of so many of them have not been there before that that you wonder, okay, how's it going to play out, and where's it going to go, and being in Australia and New Zealand, it does make it difficult for the crowds to be the kind of following that normally a Women's World Cup would take from the U.S. to get them to show up in Australia and New Zealand it's a long trek, and I don't think it's going to be there. I say that to say this, and that is one of the things I can honestly say that has always impressed me is that the Australian fans and New Zealand fans as well have been some of the best fans of watching other people play, where they'll root for the underdog, they'll be rambunctious, and they'll be fun. And I mean, all you have to do is watch an Australian Open tennis tournament, and you'll see it doesn't matter whether the person's from Australia or not. They're engaged. They come to the game to have fun and to enjoy it. And that's all you can really ask out of a crowd from that standpoint.
Yeah, well, Australia and New Zealand are both going to be in the tournament, and the interesting thing is actually that Australia is ranked 10th in the world, and New Zealand I think is around 14th or something like that. So we're not talking about the situation we had with Qatar where they were just happy to be there because they're hosting, and like Australia and New Zealand probably would have qualified if it was in another country. So. they're definitely going to have something to cheer for. And
Sure.
Australia is actually the favorite to win their group. I disagree with that. I think Canada wins the group. I don't think Canada wins the tournament, but I think Canada can go deep enough into the tournament. They definitely do have the experience, as the video mentioned, that the gold medal champions from the last Olympics. Which actually, you don't see a lot of the men go compete in the Olympics, but a lot of the women do. For these teams, because obviously the women's competitions are not as built up as much around the world, which obviously is something that needs to change. It has been changing. Now we see things like the She Believes Cup and the Arnold Clark Cup and things like that. These are just kind of like small mini tournaments in February that these women's teams are doing. So that's good, because the more experience you can get, obviously, and the more playing time, that's only going to build it up. So
a number of the women who play, not only in North America, or in Canada, and the United States, and around the world for that matter, have endorsement deals, and the endorsement deals pay. In many ways, it pays more for them to show up at an Olympic event than it does to show up to a cup that no one knows much about, right? So you're playing on a world stage. So from that standpoint, the incentive is there for the women to play in the Olympics, where it isn't for the United States men or the Canadian men, for that matter. But yeah, it's good stuff, and we're looking for a good cup. I mean, who knows? I mean, you roll the ball out there and you play. Canada's, from what I understand, Canada has played very, very well as a side, and they're a little bit like the U.S., but not quite. They're not as new, meaning the youth brigade hasn't quite taken over yet. So I mean, the seasoned veterans part of that equation might very well play to their advantage.
Yeah, definitely. Canada has a very good team, but they're not the best team in North America. I think if they have to run into the U.S. in the tournament, they're probably going to have a tough time with that. They actually they lost to the U.S. in the She Believes Cup back in February. So definitely, they're good. They're going to struggle with the U.S. if they have to run into that. That's why I say Canada can go deep into the tournament, but I don't see them going past the semifinals, just because they're kind of like Sweden in the sense where, always a bridesmaid, never a bride. They're always right there, but not quite good enough to win it all. And like I said, I think Canada is probably the better pick to win the group over Australia. You can get them at plus 200. I think there's incredible value on that because of how good the Canadian team is. But when push comes to shove, when I pick a winner for the Women's World Cup, I look a lot of what these teams do against some of the better teams in the world, because beating Finland 15-0 tells me nothing about your team. That all that tells me is you went up against a team that you were a lot better than, and you were able to score 15 goals and went out there and scored the 15 goals. Okay, but like time and time again, I see many teams, they can score 9 goals in a game. They don't, but it's the matches, and that's why I say England is overrated coming into this tournament, because I look at those matches and I go, okay, so England destroys these bad teams like every other good women's team does. But then, okay, so yeah, they're Euro Cup champions, but you look at their match against Germany, they needed extra time. That was a draw after 90 minutes. They had to squirt that one out in the extra time. They play Spain, that was a draw after 90 minutes, had to skirt that one out in the in the extra time. And then I think the finals even went to penalties, which they won. And then, as I mentioned, England, they beat Brazil in the Cup of Champions, but again, 1-1 draw and 1 in penalties. So these are things I look at when you struggle to play against some of the better teams in the world. Then, that kind of, I'm gonna weight your 1-1 draw and win in penalties a lot more than I'm going to weight your 9-0 win over some team that's not even in the top 50.
And nobody cares about, yeah. Speaking, as we said, the Women's World Cup starts next week. But so does, a lot of fascinating and and entertaining soccer on on the continent here, all over the place, as the one of the major events, or it's the first time it's ever been played, but it's being played up as a major event. Begins on the same weekend, frankly, that the MLS All-Star game is going to be played. So there's some great soccer coming up next week.
Are you talking about all the friendlies they're doing in
Yeah, there's
US,
friendlies, and there's tournament games that'll be interesting as well. So yeah, it's going to be fun. I know that the MLS has made this a 3-day affair. They're going to have some skills competitions and some fun extra bits that they haven't had in the past, and so we'll see how that plays out. It'll be kind of like they're trying to mimic the very successful part of what the NBA does, which is, they have a wonderful deal with the slam dunk contest and all these skills situations, and that usually draws a better audience than the game itself. In the case of the MLS, obviously in this particular case, it's rather odd because they don't play East versus West. They play an all-star MLS team against Chelsea, which, it's an interesting way of doing things, but okay, fine.
And then you want me to put you on the same level as the Premier League.
Right. You have
it's like when I saw PSG
team to play, and it's not like Chelsea's going to, bring everybody, right? I mean, Chelsea's going to show up, but they're showing up to pick up a check. They don't want to lose, but even if they did, they don't care.
I don't even know if they're going to have their real team. First of all, Chelsea as a team they don't even know who's going to be their starting 11.
That's right.
Come August. So whoever you're going to see in this game, like who knows who they're going to be. But just remember that, I watched a game last year that was PSG versus the Korean All-Stars.
Okay.
So all I'm going to say is, if you got to put together the MLS All-Stars to face an elite club in Europe, maybe your league isn't quite at the level you think it is at.
But that's been something that I've argued with for years. They always bring somebody over here, and they pick an all-star team to play them, and that's kind of it's basically disrespectful to the players that you have. It's like saying we don't have a team good enough to play against them. Well, maybe.
And not to mention, the team you picked finished 12th in the Premier League this year. We're not even talking about a top half table team.
Right.
This is a bottom half of the table team.
Right. So,
that has 40 players on their roster, where none of them are probably going to be on their roster come August.
Right. So some of these guys, whenever they finish, may end up on an MLS team. You never know.
Yeah, maybe these are tryouts for them.
Right, exactly.
Come play for the Dodgers. Let me see how high you can take it over the crossbar.
Yeah, we didn't have a chance to talk about the All-Star game where, the people, every time Shohei Ohtani came to the plate, they held up placards saying, Seattle's where you should be.
Did you hear them chant "sell the team" when the sole Oakland A's player walked up to the plate?
Right. Oh God, it was hilarious.
It's not just the Oakland A's fans. That was in Seattle.
No. Yeah.
Okay. Athletics fans are not traveling to Seattle to watch the All-Star game. These are just, your casual baseball fan thinks it's absolutely disgusting what the MLB is doing to Oakland.
Right.
And I know Rye Cape has the same opinion if you're still watching.
Right.
I know Rye Cape thinks it's an absolute joke how they're going to relocate this team to Vegas. And Vegas doesn't even want the team.
No, they don't.
They want a brand new expansion team. They don't want your piece of crap.
In fairness, in fairness to Vegas, they're not. I mean, look, it's a sports town, okay. In one way, okay. One way is they've got the NFL. Now that most of the fans that I'm not speaking out of turn here. Most of the fans who go to the Raiders games come up from Los Angeles or come down from Oakland, okay, because it's a cheap flight from LA to Vegas. It's a cheap flight from San Francisco in the Bay Area to Vegas. Okay, so you can get in and out of Vegas if you just want to go to the game and not spend the night, but just fly down on a Sunday morning, fly back on a Sunday evening. Round trip for to Vegas. From LA is like $200. Same thing for San Francisco Bay Area. So for people to get there, it's not that hard. Now, of course, are you going to have fans from Vegas? Yes, you're going to definitely have fans from Vegas. They've done a very good job, full marks to them on selling the nights. Okay, that's been a good thing. But you're selling to 18,000 people. Okay, basically. So you can get a 16, 17,000, seat T-Mobile Arena filled up and good. I'm good on you for that. But baseball in Vegas, I just don't see it. I just don't see it being a good fit for them because it's way too many games. It's 81 home games. First of all, you have to play somewhere until they build a stadium. So if you play in Vegas, you're gonna have 119 degree, days in the summer. Even if you started the games, later in the evening, like at 7:05 or 8:05, it's not going to change the temperature that much. So, plus, we talk about Colorado, right? The ball flies. If you take a look at the Aviators, the AAA Farm Club, if you watch, the ball really flies in Vegas too because there's no humidity, and so it really is amazing. I imagine it. If Judge got a chance to bat in Vegas, he'd probably hit a ball to Reno. But it's really, and they kind of push this thing through, but there's still a long, long way to go before they get to Vegas. In that regard. But yeah, they definitely were doing that. And I hate that, by the way, one more last thing. I hate the uniforms that they use for the All-Star game. Hate them. Why they couldn't just let them play using their own uniforms, like they used to do forever. One of the great lines, I wish I would have said it. I didn't, but I wish I would have. Came from Tom Verducci, who said he thought the the National League uniforms looked like they were coming, that they were working at Jiffy Lube, because they did look like the blue outfits that the guys did wear there. So I don't know what they're doing, but
how I feel about the All-Star game.
Yeah, I know. It's even the home run derby was entertaining. That was okay, but Vlad Jr. winning.
Just let him go out there in like jeans and a t-shirt.
Yeah, I don't care. Who cares what
just go out there and play shorts.
I don't care. It's like go out and have fun. Just nobody's keeping score anyway. You know what's going to happen. I do think.
Yeah, wasn't there that one spring training game where like they played 9 innings and the two teams kept wanting to play, and the ump was like, "Well, I'm going home," and they just kept banging out another 3 innings with no ump.
I remember a spring training game when Joe Torre was managing, and they both sides ran out of pitchers. They wanted to get everybody in, and then they realized, wait a minute, we played 9 innings, the game's tied, and we've thrown our pitchers the requisite amount of innings we want to. Now, could they have, each taken a pitcher and thrown, another couple innings? Yeah, probably. But it's spring training and you don't want to hurt anybody. So they went to the umpire. The umpire says, it's 10th inning. And Torre and the manager from the other side, I can't remember who they're playing, walks over and says, no, I'm sorry, we're not playing it anymore. We'll leave it as a tie. And you will see ties in spring training quite a bit because they just don't want to, there's no sense, frankly, in extending the game, to get a victory or a loss in a meaningless game.
Especially at the beginning of the season. You don't want to be, putting stress on guys when they haven't even gotten to the thick of it yet.
Yeah, it's good. Well, how's it? Well, in his first outing, he threw 129 pitches. It's like, what? Good God.
Yeah, so he's going to go at the end of the rotation. We'll see.
Right.
We'll see him 5 games into the season.
Right. We'll see him. Sometime in June. So yeah, you want to be careful about those kind of stuff. Talking about baseball, let's just jump on the schedule. Here's the second half. Starting.
The Dodgers are in first now.
Yeah. Here we
Not
go.
playing on Sunday really helped them out.
Yeah, it didn't it? Okay. You got Philadelphia and San Diego. That's the San Diego and Philly will meet each other at the bank tomorrow in Philly. San Francisco is in Pittsburgh. That's the Apple TV game tomorrow night, 7:05 first pitch. You got Miami and Baltimore, the two second-place teams, facing off in Camden Yard. Arizona, Toronto. That game's being played up your neck of the woods in Toronto. That's a big weekend series, I think, for both of those teams, don't you?
Well, the Blue Jays need to get going because they're obviously in fourth of their division. But
right.
Yeah, the Diamondbacks I guess they just dropped out of first by like a game.
Right.
So they got to get moving too. But they have a very good road record. So I wouldn't be shocked if they come out here and paddle the Blue Jays around a bit.
Well, the Dodgers are facing the Mets in Flushing Meadows tomorrow night. Milwaukee, Cincinnati. That's a showdown right there.
That's a continuation
of
the series right before. That's the
series I was talking about. Yep. That's if you forgot, we played Milwaukee last time. We're going to move to, this is we're going to change things up a bit and head over to Cincinnati.
But it's funny because actually going into that series, Milwaukee was like 3 or 4 games behind Cincinnati, and now they're just the 1 game behind. If Milwaukee wins tomorrow, then they have the exact same 50-42 record. So all of a sudden, the NL Central has gotten interesting.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Too bad we can't talk to Rye about that. It's kind of like drafting, right? You take up 3 cars, catch up, and you're right there behind Cincinnati. The Chicago White Sox, who have once again betrayed their fans, is facing the best team in baseball at this time, the Atlanta Falcons, the Atlanta Braves. Boston.
The Falcons are the best, Jim.
Yeah.
That is true fact come this NFL season.
Oh, man. So Boston travels to Wrigley. So you got the Fenway boys are visiting the north side, taking on the Cubs.
This Red Sox team has been so weird. So they're like 5 games over 500, right? They're in 5th place of the AL East with a 5 game over 500 record, and like they've been so up and down. Like they went into the break on a 5-game winning streak, and it just seems like they don't win and lose. They don't alternate. It's just like we win 8 straight and we lose 8 straight. That's how we do it.
That's how we do it. Well, they better fix that. Tampa Bay, who trailed off at the end of the first half, kind of slowed down there, is facing Kansas City. Tyler Glasnow and Marshall pitchers on that one.
If that's not a sweep, then the Rays need to get something checked.
Yeah, there's going to be some serious problems there. Washington is in St. Louis for a 3-game series. The Yankees are out in Colorado. Houston is down in Orange County, where they're facing the Anaheim Angels. And that is we're going to get back to that. Put a pin in that one for a moment. The Twins are at the Please Sell the Team Oakland A's. And Detroit takes their team and heads north to finish out the weekend for us at Seattle. So it's Detroit and Seattle. Okay, so we put a pin in that LA, the Angels, Houston. We did that because, and we've talked about this, but it's something worth chatting about a little bit more. The Angels are 1 game under 500. Do you try to trade Ohtani as soon as humanly possible? Or do you keep? Now, Artie Moreno in the past has been absolutely adamant about never trading a star. He just won't do it. Now, in the case of Mike Trout, he paid him, which is good. But, Trout got $500 million. Now, that was an extension. So some of that money, in fairness, some of that money was part of the deal before. So is it really $500 million? Not quite. No, it's more, in the high threes. Like we couldn't live on that. The high threes for a while there. So that's how it kind of played in that regard. But, the Dodgers, the Mariners, I think we all think he wants to stay on the West Coast. San Francisco Giants, all are in there. Padres, no, that's a nothing chance. There's no chance.
They gotta be shedding soon.
Yeah, they're definitely, forget that. They may be separating Juan Soto at the end of the trade deadline. So do you trade Ohtani, or do you just try to make the playoffs? At the end of the day, I mean, he's either going to walk and you're going to get nothing. You're going to trade him, or you're going to sign him. And if you're going to sign him, you've had to have had conversations with the agent. By this point, I would think if I'm Ohtani, and I haven't, had a deal or a figure put in front of me by Artie Moreno and the Angels, I'm going to say, look, guys, I have no interest in re-signing until I test the open waters.
Yeah. So, a week before the All-Star break, I was telling you the Angels have to go for it.
Mm-hmm.
But they were so bad in that last week before the All-Star break. It really killed them because they went from being 4 games over to now they're a game under 500.
Mm-hmm.
And now all of a sudden you had the Mariners getting hot and pulling themselves over 500 when they were in 4th for most of the thing. And obviously now you have Houston and Texas are just trying to run away with it at this point. They're in a race to see who can run away with it more. So it's a really tough decision to me. And honestly, I think this is only one that the Angels really know, because if you're the Angels organization, I think by now you got to have some idea of does Ohtani actually like being here and want to stay here? And I think that's really the question, because that's the one thing that we haven't really heard about with these Ohtani talks is everybody's just like, oh, well, he probably wants to stay on the West because it's easy fly back to Japan and all these things. But so does anybody actually know, is he happy in the city he's living in LA there? And is he happy playing for the Angels?
Well, my Japanese is not as good as it should be, but from what I've read from the LA columnists who cover the Angels and cover baseball in Southern California, Ohtani has always said, first and foremost, the most important thing to him is winning. He wants to win. Okay. Well, you're a professional athlete. You'd be a fool not to want to win. Okay. That's pretty much cliche. But he said he likes the area. He likes the Angels. I mean, he said all the right things to be an Angel again. Okay. But, the fact that for yet another year, Mike Trout gets injured at all, there's never a good time, but, he got injured at a time when they, as you said, that last week, really, that was a pivotal week for them. Could they keep moving forward and keep that momentum going? Well,
and the other thing Ohtani's got to be thinking about is this is a guy who's pretty much been injured since you got to the team.
Right. And the same thing for Anthony Rendon. So Rendon and Trout Trout's not going to be back with the team for the rest of sometime, and we don't know what time. Sometime they said in August. Okay, there's been another week, maybe to 10 days for Rendon. All right, so you got 2 of your major people who protect Ohtani. They're not there. And so now it's Ohtani, having to carry the load. And oh, by the way, they still don't have a pitcher. So, you know, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if Artie's jinxed or what's going on, but that Angels team has just not, you know, and I can't fault him for not putting money in. He has put a ton of money into the Angels, but they have just not delivered on anything that he's done to keep them competitive.
So the other thing here, I think, is if you're the Angels and you knew you wanted to re-sign him and he wants to stay with the team, why haven't you done it yet? That tells me you want to leave the door open for a possible trade if you're not in a position to really go for it this year.
Right.
And I think what's going to happen, so if Ohtani only cares about the money and likes where he is, he'll stay with the Angels.
Mm-hmm.
If he really cares about winning and like winning is the end all and be all for him, he'll go to the Dodgers because that's not a big move. You don't even have, like you said, you don't even have to sell the house. You stay
47 miles up I-5.
Yep. You just stay settled in and you take a new route to the stadium every day.
Right.
And the other scenario I see here is if he gets traded, I think it's to the Mariners.
Yeah.
I don't know if they would trade him within the division is the thing.
I think that prior to the changing of the schedule, where you used to play a team 19 times and now you only play 13 times, I think that has taken away some of that. But here's the thing: if you are you got to look at it now. Let's say, all right, fine. Let's say we are general managers. We have decided we're going to trade Ohtani. We now have to look at who is going to fit for us, right? Because if you're going to trade Ohtani, you better get a king's ransom for him. So you got to look, you talked about the Dodgers, talked about the Mariners, right? We talked about the Giants. There are other clubs out there as well who I'm quite sure would dangle some people there out. But let's say, for the sake of argument, Texas were thinking, if we got Ohtani, this will push us over the top and get it. Who's basically going after him for a rental, and who's basically going after him for long term? Because in some regards, some players have done this in the past. I'm not saying Ohtani would or wouldn't, but some have. So, all right, look, I will okay a trade to XYZ, right? I have trade. I don't know if he has a trade clause that he gets to pick, okay? But if he does, he can say, okay, I'll go to the Dodgers, but only if we meaning the Dodgers, and Ohtani's representatives can talk prior to trade. So in other words, what they would do is say, okay, look, here's what our long-term plan is for Ohtani. We're going to, when free agency comes, here's the numbers, we're going to give to you. Those things have happened in the past. I think and again, with an Ohtani, it was very much like Judge last year, okay, with the Yankees. They didn't want to lose him. They thought he was going to go to San Francisco back home. And obviously he didn't do that. But San Francisco was, open to telling Brian Cashman, look, we'll sit down with him. If you want to trade him, we'll sit down with him and talk and work with you guys. So we're going to trade of players for whatever. You're going to get less for Ohtani, even for the people who are willing to quote unquote overpay for him in prospects and such, because he doesn't have a year left on his contract. So you don't have him. You have him for 2 months. So if you are the Angels and you are going to trade him, trading him before the deadline makes a lot more sense than trading him at the deadline, because you're not going to get the return at the deadline that you might get now. So, I would guess they're going to want the two of your top 10, minor league players, and maybe 2 players who are on your roster right now. So, are they going to get that? I don't know. The situation may become that they want to trade him, but they can't square the amount of what's coming back with what the value. I mean, look, you're never going to get the value of Ohtani coming back, but when the Nationals traded Soto, they did it, and Trey Turner with time on his contract so that they could literally get, the proverbial king's ransom. They got the players they wanted, knowing that, okay, not only do you get them for the month of September to help you get to October, but you got them a year afterwards as well. That's not the case with Ohtani. Ohtani, you got him for a month. And if you're lucky, you get into the postseason and you go from there. But it might be interesting. It could also be this. You could also go to Ohtani if you're Artie Moreno and say, look, you want to win. We get that. Tell you what we're going to do. We're going to trade you to a team. And this is where you go to the rental side, right? We're going to trade you to a team. But once, the free agency opens up, we want to be the first people you call to talk about a deal. And so, maybe they give Ohtani the opportunity to play. Now that worked out one another time recently. Now, if you remember when Aroldis Chapman was the closer for the Yankees.
Yeah.
But they traded him to Chicago. He won a championship in Chicago. And the next year he went back to the Yankees. So it was almost like they set it up to say, okay, look, I get what you want. We'll get you there. But then when it's all said and done, come on back to us. So could that happen with Ohtani? Maybe. But it's going to be fun to find out, what happens or what doesn't happen.
That's an interesting scenario. The one I was going to throw out to you was let's say the Angels decide to hold on to Ohtani.
Mm-hmm.
Could you see the Padres selling at the deadline to free up some cash and then go to sign him to try and do like a patch rebuild at the end of the season after they've shed some cash off that?
Well, okay. Yeah, yeah, but
where's that you're thinking?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I'm thinking about the $1 billion left side of their team. They get a shortstop and a third baseman that make between them close to $1 billion. I mean, what do you trade Manny Machado? What do you do? I mean,
he was the first to come, right? And
he was the 300. Yeah, he's still got what 9 years on it or 8.
And I was going to say
9 or 8 years on his contract. That's an albatross contract.
And what has he done for the team since he left the Dodgers?
Well, I mean, he's played well, but not to the level of the $300 million that they paid him. But look at Juan Soto. He hasn't. I mean, Juan hasn't had any success there.
That's the other thing, right? Like Juan Soto's turning out to be a bust.
Yeah.
At this point, so that's a contract that's something you don't even need to pay now.
Well, he's walking. I mean, this is his walk year.
No, exactly, right, and that's my point. Is like the way he's been playing. Like this guy wanted $500 million 2 years ago.
Juan Soto might be the perfect rental.
Yeah, because I look at him like he's been a bust. His value has gone down. You wanted $500 million 2 years ago, and you've done nothing production wise since then. And with Ohtani, you get the pitcher and that kind of production.
Well, remember too that Juan is still on his rookie contract, so he's the perfect rental because you're going to get something in return. It's not going to be much, trust me. But you'll get a player that may help you.
Because the potential's there. It didn't work. He was great in Washington. It didn't work out in San Diego for some reason.
Right.
But another team will look at that like, hey, if I can get him for cheap.
It was, to me, when he left, and what made Juan Soto so good was he had some really good veterans around him that tutored him and that drew him out. He didn't have that support group in San Diego. I still think Juan Soto could be a great player. I don't think he's a $500 million player. I still think he's got the ability to be a good hitter and to be, play in the field. He's an average fielder. He's not a plus, fielder, and he's not necessarily even a base stealer. But he can. He can win a batting championship. I can tell you that, and he still can hit home runs.
You may have just hit the problem right on the head with the Padres. Is that when they put together this team and spent all that money, it was kind of just they grabbed a bunch of Sotos, right? Like, okay, young star, we think you're going to be good. Young star. That's our lineup. But we had no really experienced veterans who have been with the team and have that experienced mind to help guide these young minds up. So maybe that's your problem. Maybe they need to shed some of that younger talent and bring in some of those Oakland A's that they were so eager to get rid of. They're tearing up the league.
Right. Yeah, it's the thing that helped Juan Soto immensely was first Jason Worth, and then Jason, retired. Ryan Zimmerman helped him a lot. And then Anthony Rendon helped him a lot. And so there were people, and then Bryce, but early, in the situation, Bryce helped him. All of them, calmed him down whenever he would get freaked about something. And I think you're right about the Padres. Who on that roster is the clubhouse, main man, right? And you have to have one of those guys. They may not even be the star. They may not even be a guy who plays every day. Okay. I can remember in 2019, Howie Kendrick was a big guy in that regard. Somebody, Daniel Murphy was a big guy in that regard. Guys who could just, walk into the locker room, and the moment they walked in, they could walk directly to somebody's locker and say, hey, look, whatever happened tonight, forget about it. Tomorrow's another day, and we're going to keep on going. Scherzer was that guy.
Yeah, and I know you've talked in the past a lot about how, having that clubhouse guy is important. And with the Padres, I don't think you have that. It's just a bunch of young talent trying to break out and be the best on the team, but everybody can't be the best.
Cal Ripken once told me one of the great lines, so I give him credit for it. He said, sometimes you have a team that, walks, he goes, 25 guys who will have dinner that evening at the same restaurant and all laugh and enjoy each other. And then sometimes you have 25 independent contractors who will take different cabs whenever they leave the ballpark, going either back to the hotel or, wherever they're going, because they're not going with each other. And I think the Padres are that team that they just don't have somebody in that locker room who can. It can't, and people will say, well, what's the manager? The manager can't do that. You cannot do that. You can't be your confidant and friend and then turn around and be the manager.
The manager is literally there to manage. He's more of the guy I need to make sure my arms are getting the right amount of work. I'm not overstressing arms. I'm bringing in the right guys at the right time, putting the right lineup for this matchup. You can't expect them to be your friend, as you put it.
But I will say this about Dusty Baker and Davey Johnson.
It's great.
Dusty, I love them, and Davey, both of them, as managers, because what they would do is they would watch somebody, take infield practice or outfield practice, whatever, and they would walk over to him and they'd say, you know what, this is cool, what you're doing is fine, but if you did this a little bit differently or did that a little bit differently, so they'll teach, right? They're not your friend, they're not, or Dusty. One thing that Davey and Dusty both did is they would on the flight, either you're going on a road trip or you're coming home from a road trip. They would walk by, each row and they'd give pieces of paper to players, and they open a piece of paper and it would say, you're playing on Tuesday, Thursday, and these are the bench players. Tuesday, Thursday, and maybe Sunday, an afternoon after a night game. So the players on the bench players had it in their head, okay, cool. I now know what I'm going to do. I know these other 9 guys are going to play. Okay. That's a given. When am I going to play? And that gave them the ability to say, okay, cool. I know I'm going to play this week, maybe even twice, maybe even 3 times this week. So you're up and you want to play.
I can
because
earn
you
my
know when
spot in that.
Sorry?
Maybe I can earn my spot in that.
Right.
day.
Maybe I can knock that knucklehead out of the way. So anyway, it is what it is. Anyway, if you're Shohei Ohtani's agent, call us. We'll help you.
We do
We help
everything.
Don
Major
Garber.
League,
We help
MLB,
everybody.
MLS, Major
Right.
League Eating, Joey
Yeah.
Chestnut.
We
Whatever.
are here for you. We're here to help any sport, any promotion situation. Don't worry, we got your back. We'll get you. So
We are the ideas people.
that's right. Did you ever see the movie? Anybody out there ever see the movie Night Shift?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've seen that movie.
Okay, it was the first. It was Ron Howard's first movie that he directed. It had Henry Winkler in it, and it had the amazing Bill Blazkowski. Yes, that the guy who played that character. Michael Keaton was. He used to walk around with with one of those old hand tape recorders where you could, like a dictaphone, and he would. Crazy thoughts would come into his head, and he'd say something like, we have tuna with mayonnaise for tuna salad. What if we fed the tuna mayonnaise? Then we could skip the thing. He goes, call Starkist, with the idea. So, and whenever Henry Winkler would ask him what's going on, he goes, I'm the idea man, Chuck. Don't worry about it. We got to take it. We got to take care of. So don't everybody worry about it. We're the idea guys. We got to take care of. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And highly recommend if you haven't seen it. It was also Shelley Long's first movie. It was there are a lot of people there that you recognize, but it was all their first major film. So get a chance to watch Night Shift. It's a funny film. All right, everybody. We have shared and we enjoy sharing with you, but now it's time to leave. So we will be back with you tomorrow, 2:00, and by all means, just have a good time, everybody. We shall be back at 2 tomorrow for Friday.